He's getting better every game. The best team in the NBA so far has been the Utah Jazz, and he was dominant last night again. I would make the argument today that Zion Williamson is the second or third most popular player in the NBA. I think LeBron and Steph Curry go back and forth. I think Steph is very relatable to young kids because he's small like young kids, where LeBron looks just so monstrous and big. I think LeBron and Steph are the two most popular players in the league. I think Zion's already number 3. KD and Harden are great, but their personalities are a little odd. Giannis and Kawhi are quiet, not necessarily dynamic personalities. But have you noticed anything? Utah's the number 1 team in the league. The NBA's not rushing to put them on TV. The NBA didn't rush to put New Orleans on TV when they had Anthony Davis. Is anybody noticing how ESPN and TNT are fighting to get Zion Williamson on television? It reminds me when Tim Tebow was in the NFL, I was told by an executive that Tebow articles on Sunday night after the games were getting 5 and 6 times like the Patriot articles with Brady or the Giant articles with Eli. I think the NBA's found their next face in the league, and I think it's Zion, and I think he's already the 3rd most popular player. I remember a couple years ago, it may have been 5 or 6 years ago, and I've said this on the air with Joy several times, when 60 Minutes came out and said, Giannis is the face of the league. I'm like, I didn't know who he was until like year 3 in the NBA. Zion has 3 things that are really, really important. Number 1, he played at Duke, and his shoe exploded, and there was controversy around him. So we knew him as a teenager. I didn't know Giannis I didn't know Kawhi until he'd been in the league like 3 years. I didn't know Giannis. It's one thing for Bryce Harper, who he's in the minors, and I knew him in high school. It's another thing, like we didn't talk about Mike Trout, and then he went to the Angels, and he had to be great before we talked about him being great. We talked about Bryce Harper being great in the 8 bigs when he was in high school. So Zion played at Duke. That's why I've always defended college basketball. It's a good platform. NBA should use it more. And we knew who he was early. Plus the internet, his dunks. Secondly, is his game is not only dynamic, it doesn't look like anybody else's game. I remember when Magic Johnson came into the NBA. There'd never been a 6', 8.5" point guard. He didn't even look like other guards. Magic had kind of a funky shot. He didn't shoot like anybody else. He didn't play like anybody else. Zion's game doesn't look like anybody else's game. And number 3, his personality. Like Magic. He's likable. He smiles. He wanted to play when his shoe exploded. He wanted to come back to college basketball, but he said, all my agents and stuff said I probably need to go pro. I'd love to come back and play college basketball. I think he's the 3rd most popular guy in the league. We knew him early. His game is crazy and crazy different. And I find the guy incredibly likable. That's not that James Harden isn't likable. He's a little odd. Kawhi is quiet. I mean, Giannis, we didn't kind of figure him out till later. And his game is good, but there's holes in it. And I don't find it terribly dynamic, although there are moments when he makes great plays. But if you look at how hard the NBA is working to get Zion on television, that tells you everything. They're looking at data and they're looking at research, and he is jumping and popping off the charts. They're not doing that with Kawhi. And Dame Lillard's great. They're not doing that with the Trailblazers. They didn't do it with AD and the Pelicans. They're not doing it with Ja Morant. They're doing it with historically irrelevant New Orleans and Zion. Joy Taylor with the news.
No.
Turn on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Well, 49ers GM John Lynch said last week that he had no doubt that Jimmy Garoppolo would be the team's quarterback in 2021 if he's healthy. But they're still rumored to be looking at other options. They reportedly called the Panthers to ask about potentially trading for Teddy Bridgewater.
Well, Teddy's got injury stuff, too.
It's very strange.
That's a weird one. Does somebody have phone records? How do they know that? That's weird.
Well, look, it's a trusted source.
Is it?
The Athletic is reporting this.
Okay.
Yes. I just find it kind of interesting that
wouldn't be the fit.
John Lynch would come out and say that, and then there's still reports that they are looking elsewhere.
Can you and I agree with this? They're moving off Jimmy G in a year.
Yes. And I think if they had a viable option right now, they would move off him now.
I agree, but they don't.
And it's not because of talents, because although there are some people out there who don't like Jimmy G, talent-wise, he's shown what he can do.
He wins.
When he's healthy. The problem with Jimmy G is he's always injured. He's missed 23 games to injury.
Remember when the Kirk Cousins rumors came out? We were both, at least I was like, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has never missed a start. He missed a Week 17 start years ago, playoffs. So what Kyle Shanahan, that's why Bridgewater makes no sense to me, because Teddy's had some traumatic injuries.
No, I don't think that Teddy is a fit there.
I don't.
And I do think that Carolina is actively trying to move off of Teddy, and I think that they will. Whether they're going to this season or not, it's going to depending on what they do in the draft and the rest of free agency. But the thing with Jimmy G is, while he may be capable, obviously we've seen him play in a Super Bowl and be one throw away from winning it, the amount of injuries brings him down to this level of quarterback, because after a while, it's exhausting to have to constantly be worried about if he's going to be available.
It is. But for the time being, like I said to start the show, in this moment, he's really valuable. Because Kyle Shanahan can't go into another year and finish third or fourth again.
But he might, because Jimmy G might get hurt again.
He might. But listen, with the fact that they already haven't moved off him with his injuries tells you we don't have anybody better.
No, they don't. But it doesn't surprise me that they are making so many calls, because it becomes impossible to game plan and to plan for your season when you don't know if your franchise quarterback is going to be available. And that's not Jimmy G's fault. It's just the way that it is. He's injured a lot, and a lot is kind of an understatement. He's missed 23 games and not that long of a career.
Yeah.
It's impossible to plan for that. So Tom Brady pulled off the dream season, winning his 7th Super Bowl in his first year in Tampa, but he didn't spend too much time celebrating the accomplishment. Bucs quarterback coach Clyde Christensen revealed he got a call from Brady the very next morning, ready to get to work on next season. He said, Brady said, I was just sitting here thinking, and I think we can really be better next year. I think we're going to be a better team. He was already excited about the next year. It's amazing. That's how his mind works. He's barely been in a couple hours, and he's already thinking about it the next morning. Tom, you got to enjoy the wins sometimes, buddy. Like, you just live a little.
But it's funny. So we all sleep 8 hours a day, and theoretically we all work 8 hours a day. And that gives you 8 more hours.
Yeah.
And I think about this all the time. My daughter always goes, Dad, for an old guy, you're really productive. And I'm always like, well, you sleep 8 and work 8. What are you going to do?
You're not that old.
Yeah, that's true. But what do you do for 8 hours? Is it possible? So you have a lot of life. Your days are long. Tom Brady could have had 7.5 great hours with his family that day, and then called this guy and said, I actually was thinking about this driving to the store, driving out to, the Bay here. I think we're going to be better next year. So that story sounds like Tom has no life. But if you think about the average, I think about this all the time, is that this Sunday, for instance, I had to do a podcast, but I sat and watched an NBA game, and I watched a movie, and I thought, what a loser. I sat in my hotel room for 3.5 hours. I was so discouraged. And then I thought to myself, what my daughter says, that's just life. You got a lot of time in your life.
Well, also, NBA is technically work.
Yeah, I guess.
But
I guess my point is, the idea that Tom's obsessed, he could have had 7.5 hours of his non-sleeping,
it's not like he sent him a PowerPoint presentation on what he's got going on next year. But it is the mentality of it. Look, success is not an accident.
Yeah, thank you.
And there are outliers where people get given opportunities and there are overnight successes. And then most of the time, an overnight success is 10 or 20 years in the making. And sustained success is most certainly not an accident.
Thank you.
That is dedication and hard work, and Tom Brady has shown that. And the reason that he has the respect that he has around the league, and the reason that all of his teammates embraced him the way that they did and followed him, is because he leads by example. He's not just out there saying I'm the best and walking in with an air about him that, all that I've accomplished. He wakes up the next morning thinking about how to get better every day, and that is something that you can't fake. People see that, they appreciate it, and it rubs off on other people. And it can't be argued because he went to Tampa in his first year and won a Super Bowl. Yeah, so the proof is there.
Yeah, sustained success is not an accident.
It's not.
Tom's mind leads him to great places.
So James Harden led the Nets with a big win over the Spurs last night. Yeah. He recorded a triple-double in the 124-113 overtime win, which was his 7th since joining the Nets. He also became the first player to record a 30-point, 15 assists, and at least 10 rebound triple-double with no turnovers, so being very efficient. And after the game, Kyrie said there's only more good things to come for James Harden in Brooklyn.
I think we